Have you ever experienced a moment when the world seems to slow, not because of any beauty unfolding, but because something within you fractures? Yes, that was tonight for me. I stood near the edge of the ballroom, a glass of whiskey sweating in my palm, when I saw it. Lena, my wife, perched delicately upon her boss's lap like some prize he had just claimed at a county fair. The laughter that erupted around them cut straight through the thick, golden glow of the chandeliers. It was not cheerful. It was sharp, cutting, mocking. I swear, for an instant, it felt as though the very air turned hostile. My breath caught in my chest, an invisible blow I never saw coming. I could not tear my eyes away. Lena tossed her head back, laughing at something the old man whispered in her ear, her hand resting lightly upon his shoulder. Casual, effortless, calculated. The men surrounding them, executives, board members, sharks in polished suits, roared along, some clapping, some smirking. The women, for the most part, looked away politely, pretending not to see. God, it would have been so easy to react, to storm across the marble floor, to yank her up by the wrist, and make a scene she would not forget. But I did not move. I simply stood there, heart pounding in my ears, watching her turn our marriage into a sideshow act. Lena always knew how to work a room. That was part of her charm. The easy smile, the playful tilt of her head, the way she made men feel important. But this was not charm. This was deliberate. This was a knife slipped between my ribs, twisted with precision. The weight of humiliation pressed down harder with every passing second. I glanced around, if only to anchor myself, and caught a few of the onlookers stealing glances my way, waiting, watching. Would I break? Would Graham Caldwell, Mr. Calm and Collected, finally snap? I squeezed the whiskey glass tighter, its coolness grounding me. Not tonight. Can you imagine being in that position? Everyone. I waited for you to lose your composure while your own wife flaunted her betrayal as though it were some private jest from which you were excluded. My jaw tightened, yet I forced my mouth into a smile, a lazy, indifferent thing. Because here is the truth. The Real contest did not occur out there beneath the chandeliers. It transpired within, behind the eyes, beneath the skin. And I was finished playing by anyone's rules but my own. The orchestra struck up a sweeping waltz. And Lena, my wife, my supposed partner, cast a laughing glance over her shoulder at me. A challenge. She knew precisely what she was doing. She wished to see whether she could make me crack wide open, spilling everything right there upon the gleaming marble floor. I raised my glass slowly in a mock toast, tilting it in her direction. My smile grew wider, my heart colder. Two could play this game, but only one of us understood how to win it. And in that glittering, poisonous ballroom, while all others drank and laughed and whispered, I made a silent vow. Lena would not see it coming until it was far, far too late. There is an old saying my father used to repeat when life turned ugly. Asterisk smile when you bleed. It confuses the enemy. Asterisk standing there, watching Lena bask in the attention she believed she controlled, I decided I had finally grasped his meaning. So I smiled. I turned my back on her little performance, allowing the orchestra's music to smooth over the raw edges within me. My hand was steady now as I moved through the crowd, weaving between polished tables and perfumed executives, clinking my glass against theirs as though nothing in the world could touch me. Graham, one of my men barked, slapping my shoulder a little too hard. Your wife's got some spirit, huh? I laughed. Warm, easy, even as the insult gouged another mark across my pride. She does? I said lightly, swirling the whiskey in my glass. Keeps life interesting. The men chuckled, pleased with my nonchalance. No one wanted a messy scene tonight. They desired Graham Caldwell to remain polished, charming, and untouchable, and that is precisely what they would receive. Within, however, something cold and razor-sharp was knitting itself together. I did not need to storm over and make a scene. No, I required something far superior, information. And so, as the music swelled and the night wore on, I played my part to perfection. The friendly executive, the understanding husband, the man everyone wished to lean a little closer to after 2 glasses of overpriced wine. You hear about Morrison? One guest whispered, his breath hot with bourbon. Poor fellow caught skimming company funds. The boss covered it up. Naturally, I laughed in just the right places and nodded at the appropriate jokes. Every conversation was a dance, every chuckle, a move in my own silent campaign. And all the while, I listened, not for the obvious things. No, that is where amateurs look. I was hunting for cracks, fault lines, the small humiliations, the whispered resentments. Because here is the truth no one tells you about powerful men. They bleed like anyone else. You simply have to know where to place the knife. Across the room, Lena kept glancing over her shoulder, expecting me to break, to come storming back and drag her away like some jealous, wounded animal. She did not understand. Not yet. I was not wounded. I was calculating. I lifted another glass, laughed at another foolish story, and locked every sliver of humiliation away deep inside, where it would remain until I chose to unleash it on my own terms. There is a special satisfaction in remaining silent when someone expects you to scream. And tonight, I intended to savor every second of it. It is amusing. The louder the music grows, the more people believe themselves invisible. The ballroom was alive with sound, the clink of glass against glass, the swell of the orchestra, the low, steady buzz of ambition swirling in the air like cigar smoke. And somewhere within that noise, amidst the shallow compliments and hollow laughter, true power was changing hands. I lingered near one of the grand pillars, half concealed by a spray of white orchids, idly swirling my drink in a lazy rhythm. I remained just close enough to catch the edges of conversation, yet never so near as to appear eager for it. Two junior executives, boys, really, still polishing the shine on their new cufflinks, leaned in nearby, their voices low but not low enough. "You hear about the old man's side project?" one muttered, smirking over the rim of his glass. The other leaned closer, hungry for gossip. "You mean Sierra?" I did not move a muscle, not even a blink. "Yeah," the first chuckled, shaking his head. "You didn't hear it from me, but word is she's bleeding him dry, threatening to blow the whole thing wide open if he doesn't keep paying up." The second laughed, quick and nervous. "Serves him right. Guy thinks he's untouchable, but he's sweating bullets under that tux." Their talk drifted into stock options and golf trips, but I had heard enough. For a moment I stood there, feeling the familiar coil of adrenaline tighten just beneath my skin. The kind of feeling that comes just before you pull a hidden ace from your sleeve. A mistress already blackmailing him. Already greedy. The irony was almost too perfect. While he strutted about tonight, parading my wife like a gleaming trophy, believing himself invincible, the ground was already cracking beneath his feet. I smiled into my drink, a genuine smile this time, though no one noticed. Across the room, Lena caught my eye once more. She was still performing, still draping herself just so, still waiting for the reaction she believed she could wring from me. Poor thing. She had no idea the real war had already begun, and I was not merely fighting back. I was quietly, patiently weaving a noose, waiting only for the perfect moment to pull the rope tight. Most believe that triumph in battle requires brute force, yet the truth is that true victories are secured in quiet corners, with whispers and handshakes that no one ever sees coming. It was not difficult to locate her. Sierra Vance, 29. Perfect teeth, a perfect smile, and just enough bitterness behind her eyes to make her dangerous. I noticed her lingering near the terrace, nursing a half-empty glass of champagne and scanning the room with a detachment that did not quite suit the glittering crowd. She was not there to charm anyone. She was searching for an exit. I slipped through the press of bodies and stepped outside, letting the cool night air strike my face like a slap. At first, she did not notice me. Her gaze was fixed on the streetlights far below, lost in thought, or perhaps in regret. It is difficult to tell with women like her. "It's cold out here for a dress like that," I remarked casually, approaching just near enough to be heard, but not so close as to crowd her. She flinched slightly, a mere twitch, before sliding her eyes toward me. Cool, appraising. The kind of look one learns after spending too long as someone else's secret. "Maybe I like the cold," she said, lifting the glass to her lips. I smiled, slow, easy, not a threat. "Not yet. You don't know me," I said, keeping my voice light. "But I think we might be able to help each other." Now I had her attention. A flicker of suspicion crossed her face, chased quickly by curiosity. She was smart enough to be wary, but greed has a way of softening even the sharpest instincts. "You're Lena's husband," she said after a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly. I gave a small nod. "And you're Edward Langston's what?" "Assistant consultant." She laughed once, a dry, humorless sound that told me everything I needed to know. Call it contractual companionship, she said, finishing her drink with a tilt of her head. I stepped closer, keeping my tone conversational. Word is you're not exactly happy with the arrangement. She stiffened almost imperceptibly, yet offered no denial. Good. I don't care what lies between you and him, I said. Not truly. But I know a storm is coming, and it will grow ugly. She studied me closely, balancing her choices. She was no fool. A man like me does not slip into the shadows merely to exchange pleasantries. What do you want? She asked, her voice hushed. I drew a slow breath, allowing the silence to thicken between us. I want you to push, I replied. Lean in a little harder. Apply the right pressure at the right moment. And what is in it for me? She inquired, her lips shaping an expression that fell just short of a smile. Protection, I said. Legal assistance. A severance package that will make whatever hush money he offered look like cab fare. I drew an embossed, discreet business card from my pocket and held it between two fingers. She stared at it as though it might bite. And why, she said slowly, would you want to ruin him? My eyes drifted back toward the ballroom, where Lena still laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny, perched on another man's knee like a schoolgirl, starved for attention. Let's just say, I murmured, some debts cannot be paid in dollars. Sierra did not take the card immediately. She played it cool, tapping a manicured nail against the rim of her glass, pretending to consider, but I saw the instant greed overtook fear. The moment she understood there was more to gain in my game than in playing alone. She plucked the card from my hand and slid it into her clutch without a word. You'll know when to make your move, I said quietly. Just wait for the signal. And if I am caught? She asked. I offered a smile so faint it scarcely passed for polite. You won't. For a moment, the only sounds were the distant murmur of traffic far below and the faint bleed of music through the doors behind us. Then Sierra, she turned away, her heels clicking softly against the stone as she disappeared back into the ballroom. I stood there a moment longer, feeling the cold sink into my bones. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, not yet. It was something sharper, the electricity of a trap being set, invisible and inevitable. Lena thought she was performing tonight. The boss thought he was untouchable. Neither of them realized they had already stepped onto the chessboard, and I had just moved my first piece. Have you ever watched someone dig their own grave without the slightest idea they are doing it? That is what it felt like, standing there with a fresh drink in my hand, watching Lena try harder, much harder. I caught it first from the corner of my eye. That little flick of her wrist as she tilted her glass just enough to accidentally spill a thin ribbon of champagne across Edward Langston's lap. The old man laughed, wiping at his trousers, pretending to be embarrassed, but not too embarrassed. Lena squealed, high and playful, dabbing at him with a napkin in a way that made every man in the room suck their teeth and nudge each other. She leaned in close, her hand lingering just a moment too long on his thigh. It was a performance, a desperate, reckless play designed for one audience, only me. I took a slow sip of my whiskey, letting it burn a clean path down my throat. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just watched the scene unfold as though I were observing two strangers clowning around at a wedding I barely cared about. And she noticed. God, she noticed. Lena's eyes flicked over the crowd, scanning, hunting for my reaction like a gambler checking a rival's face across the table. She found me eventually, standing cool and collected among a semicircle of senior executives, casually chatting about market expansions and holiday bonuses. I caught her stare and lifted my glass again in a slow, deliberate toast. A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth, the kind you give someone. You are about to be left behind in the dust. For a half second, I saw it. The crack, the tiniest ripple across her perfect performance. Perhaps it was the stiffness in her shoulders, or the way her laugh at Langston's next joke struck a beat too high, too sharp. But it was there, that first sliver of confusion. She did not understand. Lena had walked into this evening believing she could manipulate me just as she manipulated everyone else. She thought that if she pushed the right button, jealousy would do the rest of the work for her. But what does one do when the button does not work? When the game you believed you were playing suddenly shifts into something you no longer control. I moved through the crowd as though nothing were amiss, fielding handshakes and empty pleasantries, listening, always listening. Fragments of gossip floated like feathers, AP's messy divorce, a junior associate caught embezzling travel funds, a whispered rumor that Langston's days at the top were not as secure as they seemed. Information, fuel for the fire. And Lena, for all her beauty and poise, did not realize she was becoming part of the scenery, a prop in a much larger plan she could not yet perceive. She believed she was turning the screws. What she did not know was that I had already removed the hinges. Every sultry glance she cast, every accidental touch, every laugh that rang a little too loud, it all accumulated, not against me, but against her, in this ballroom bathed in golden envy. She was no longer the star. She was merely another player unaware that the rules had changed. And I was not angry. I was not jealous. I was simply waiting for the weight of her choices to collapse beneath her own heels. And when it did, I would be ready. There is a special kind of satisfaction in pulling a trigger no one even sees you lift. By the time the ballroom began to thin out, ties loosened and high heels slipped off beneath cocktail tables, I already had everything in hand. I had everything I needed. The players were drunk, the room was sloppy, and the real game was just beginning. I slipped away without fanfare, out through the entrance where the doorman barely glanced up from his phone. The night air slapped against my face, crisp and bracing, cutting through the thick warmth of the ballroom like a blade. I checked my watch, 11:47 p.m., plenty of time. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a name buried deep in my contacts list. Miles Donahue, freelance reporter, tabloid bloodhound. A man who could sniff out a scandal faster than a divorce lawyer at a company picnic. I tapped out a simple message, an anonymous tip. Asterisk Edward Langston, mistress, financial misconduct. Ask the right questions. Start digging. Asterisk no names, no direct accusations. Just enough bait to light a fire under someone desperate for their next big story. I hit send and watched the message disappear into the ether. And just like that, the fuse was lit. You could almost feel it. The slow, invisible creep of chaos starting to unfurl. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and leaned against the cold marble wall, breathing in the city night. Car horns, the buzz of streetlights, the occasional laughter spilling out from late-night bars. The real heartbeat of the world outside that glittering tomb I'd just left behind. Inside that ballroom, Lena was still laughing too loudly. Langston was still grinning too wide. Everyone thought they were safe, secure, untouchable. It made me smile. A real, unguarded smile for the first time all night. Because here's the thing about men like Edward Langston. They build their empires on two things, reputation and fear. And when you take one away, the other crumbles faster than they ever think possible. I wasn't planning to destroy him outright. Not yet. I just needed him rattled. Just enough to lose his balance. Just enough to reach out to me, the man standing calm in the middle. He had weathered the storm and begged for help he did not deserve. Lena would not understand it yet, not fully. She would still believe she was winning, still think the evening belonged to her. But soon the currents would begin to shift, and she would feel it. The way a horse senses a coming storm hours before the sky breaks open. I pushed off the wall, straightened my cuffs, and walked back toward the hotel's grand entrance, where the last of the valets were beginning to yawn and check their watches. Tonight was not about revenge. Not yet. Tonight was about pressure. The slow kind. The kind that turns coal into diamonds or shatters it into dust. As I stepped inside, I caught sight of Lena again, perched now at a high table surrounded by a cluster of adoring hangers-on. Still smiling, still performing, still trying to win a game that was already lost. I did not move toward her. I did not need to. I ordered another drink from the bar and stood there quietly sipping, waiting, watching, because the first crack was already spreading, and neither she nor her arrogant little puppet master even knew they were standing on hollow ground. Not yet. But they would. Oh, they would. You can always tell when a room turns against you. It is not loud. It is not obvious. It is a shift you feel like a drop in barometric pressure just before a storm cracks the sky open. Lena was the last one to notice. At first, everything seemed the same. The smiles, the laughter, the soft clinking of glasses. She kept playing her role, head thrown back in laughter, fingertips tracing lazy circles along the boss's shoulder, basking in the leftover warmth of an admiration she thought would last all night. But admiration is a fickle thing, and poison, once released, does not stay contained for long. I watched it happen from a quiet corner near the bar, nursing my drink with the slow patience of a man who already knew the final score. First came the glances, tiny and telling. Furtive glances. Women whispering behind manicured hands. Men shifting uncomfortably, their jokes growing quieter, their smiles growing tighter. Then came the space, where once executives had leaned in eagerly to bask in Lena's glow, now kept deliberately wide, an extra foot between themselves and her boss, as if scandal could cling to them like a foul odor. Lena noticed, eventually. How could she not? One can feign many things in such a room. Smiles, laughter, loyalty. But energy never lies. And tonight, the energy around her was curdling. I saw her glance around, her smile faltering for only a fraction of a second, as though an invisible hand had yanked the rug from beneath her without warning. Langston did not notice. Not yet. He was too deep into his drink, too sure of himself, too insulated by decades of being the largest shark in a small pond. But Lena, she lived by reading rooms, by manipulating them. And now the room was reading her back. I leaned against the polished oak bar, swirling the amber liquid in my glass, savoring every moment. Because this subtle, creeping shift, was not the kind of humiliation she could dance her way out of. It was not loud enough to deny, nor sharp enough to blame on another. It was slow, silent, and utterly inescapable. She shifted closer to Langston, laughing a little too loudly, a little too desperately, trying to pull the center of gravity back toward herself. It did not work. The whispers kept rippling through the room, quiet at first, then bolder. Fragments drifted my way like smoke. Asterisk mistress. Not his first scandal. Wonder how long before corporate steps in. Asterisk the air around them thickened, sour and heavy. Lena's laughter stumbled once, a quick, sharp falter. She tried to hide it by tossing her hair over her shoulder, her hand brushing Langston's arm a little too forcefully. From where I stood, it was like watching a queen on a chessboard realize, too late, that the board itself had turned against her. Every move she made only served to tighten the trap. I finished my drink slowly, set the glass down with a soft click, and let the satisfaction roll through me. She didn't know how. She didn't know why, but Lena could feel it now, the cold prickle at the base of her neck, the invisible hands tugging the strings out of her grip, one by one. And me? I didn't lift a finger. I just watched. Because sometimes the most ruthless revenge isn't a firestorm. It's silence. It's stillness. It's letting someone realize, moment by agonizing moment, that the world they thought they controlled is slipping through their fingers. It didn't take long. The thing about men like Edward Langston is they're predators until they catch the scent of their own blood. And tonight, he reeked of it. I was halfway through another drink, chatting with some mid-level manager about quarterly projections neither of us gave a damn about, when I saw Langston pushing through the crowd, sweating under the collar of his $1,000 tux, his smile frozen stiff and brittle. He spotted me, his eyes wild with something that looked suspiciously like fear. "Graham," he barked, too loud, too eager. A word. The manager I was speaking to politely backed away, sensing a shift he did not want to be anywhere near. I set my glass down, adjusted my cufflinks slowly, and nodded. Of course. He led me away from the main ballroom, down a quiet side hall lined with portraits of dead executives and donors, the heavy velvet curtains muffling the noise of the party behind us. When we stopped, he didn't waste time. "You need to call it off," he hissed, his voice cracking like dry wood. "There are rumors, nasty ones. Already getting back to the board. I don't know what the hell's happening," but he wiped a shaking hand across his forehead, leaving a streak of sweat. "It's you, isn't it?" I let the silence stretch just a little longer than was comfortable. Let him stew in it. Then I offered him a small, measured smile. "Edward," I said, my voice calm. He bristled. "You seem upset." Old reflexes, but the panic was stronger than his pride tonight. "You don't understand," he rasped, leaning in close. "This could ruin me. Years of work." He choked the words back, swallowing hard. "I'll make it right. Whatever you want, just end it." It took everything I had not to laugh in his face. This was the same man who, just hours ago, was holding court with my wife draped across his knee like some midlife trophy. The same man who thought he could humiliate me in public and walk away untouched. Now he was sweating through his shirt and begging. Poetic, really. I stepped in just slightly, enough to make sure he saw it in my eyes. The absolute control. "There's a way out," I said quietly. His head jerked up like a drowning man spotting a lifeboat. Anything, he whispered. I folded my hands behind my back, keeping my voice even, almost gentle. You're going to give a toast, I said. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. He blinked, confused. And you're going to raise your glass to me publicly and thank me. I let the words hang there for a beat. For my loyalty, for my friendship, for everything I've done for this company. His mouth opened, then closed, a fish gasping on dry land. You want a toast? He croaked. I smiled slightly. Think of it as a demonstration, to remind everyone where the real respect belongs. He hesitated, pride warring with panic. But in the end, fear won. He nodded once, sharp and broken. Good, I said, clapping him lightly on the shoulder. Let's not keep everyone waiting. I turned and walked back toward the ballroom without looking to see if he was following. I already knew he would. The music swelled as I stepped back into the golden glow of the party. Across the room, Lena spotted me, her expression tight with confusion and something close to suspicion. She sensed it now, that invisible tremor running through the crowd, the shift. But it was too late for her. It was too late for all of them. Tonight, they would see the truth, whether they understood it or not. And the best part was that I did not have to humiliate anyone. They were going to do it themselves. All I had to do was raise my glass and smile. The funny thing about victory is that it does not always arrive with trumpets and fanfare. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a glass clinking against another, like the slow, inevitable turn of a head as everyone realizes the tide has shifted. Langston shuffled up onto the small stage near the head table, clearing his throat into the microphone. The music dipped, the crowd's chatter softened, the room tilting toward him like a field of flowers straining for the sun. Except there was no sun here tonight. Only a man trying desperately to hold his crumbling kingdom together with trembling hands. I stood near the center of the room, glass in hand, watching him. Lena stood off to the side, flanked by a few confused executives who were beginning to whisper, sensing the strange gravity forming around us. Langston raised his champagne flute high, his face shining under the chandeliers, though not from joy. Sweat glistened along his hairline. His eyes darted across the sea of faces, desperate to find a safe place to land. He did not find one. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice too loud, too tight. I just want to take a moment to recognize someone who truly embodies the spirit of loyalty and friendship in this company. Murmurs swept the room like a sudden wind. He coughed once into his hand and pushed on. A man who, his voice cracked slightly. He swallowed hard. Who stood by us through thick and thin. A man whose dedication and integrity are unmatched. Langston's eyes found mine across the ballroom, a silent, pleading look. I lifted my glass slightly, nothing but cold amusement behind my eyes. He licked his lips. He pressed his lips together, gave a single, grim nod, like a man resigned to the gallows, and forced the words out. To Graham Caldwell, he declared, lifting his glass higher. To loyalty. To true friendship. A smattering of polite applause followed, awkward and uncertain. A few hesitant cheers arose, more from habit than genuine feeling. The orchestra faltered for a beat before striking up a few soft chords to fill the dead air. I offered a thin, sharp smile and raised my own glass in reply. The clink of crystal against my glass rang out louder than it should have, like the final hammer strike on a coffin lid. For a moment, the entire room seemed suspended in that strange, stunned silence. No one quite understood what had just happened, yet each felt instinctively that something had shifted beneath their feet. Lena's face was a study in confusion. Her eyes darted between Langston and me, trying to piece it together, trying to comprehend what game she had stumbled into without knowing. And, more importantly, how she was no longer a player. She had become mere scenery. I caught her gaze and let my smile widen, just a fraction. No words were needed. Everything important had already been said in silence. I turned away first, allowing the moment to collapse behind me like a house of cards. Langston mumbled something about resuming the festivities, and the orchestra limped back into a waltz, but the energy never returned. The buzz was gone. In its place grew a current of unease, of questions no one yet dared speak aloud. I sipped my drink slowly, savoring it now. The whiskey tasted sweeter somehow. Lena remained frozen where she stood, her posture too rigid, the smile on her lips brittle and false. a queen upon her crumbling throne. And I simply drifted back into the crowd, letting her watch me disappear. For some victories do not require roaring applause. Some are made sweeter by silence, by the stunned look upon the face of the one who has just lost. They thought they had won, only to realize too late that they were never even playing the right game. The rest of the night passed in fragments. The clinking of half-empty glasses, laughter that no longer reached the eyes, couples murmuring goodbyes while casting glances toward me as though I were a riddle they could not quite solve. Lena did not come near me again. Instead, she watched from across the room, the way one watches a glass teetering on the edge of a table, uncertain whether to catch it or let it fall. I never gave her the satisfaction of a scene, only a thin, measured smile each time her eyes met mine, the kind that says, "I know exactly what you did, and I am already beyond it." Eventually, the party began to dissolve. One by one, the guests slipped away, their curiosity outpaced by discomfort. The music faded, the lights dimmed, and the illusion of control, hers, his, theirs, vanished like smoke in the night air. We rode home in silence. She did not ask questions. Not yet. But the tension in the car was a living thing, pulsing between us, heavy and thick, and almost begging to be cut. When we walked through the front door, I slipped off my jacket and loosened my collar. She hovered near the entryway, arms folded, heels still on as though she had not decided whether she was staying or leaving. And then she broke. "You ruined everything," she snapped, her voice shaking not with rage but with confusion. "You humiliated him. Humiliated me. What the hell did you do?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw for the first time in a long while a flicker of the girl I once loved. But it was buried now, too far beneath the calculation and vanity and self-preservation to reach. So I laughed once, not loud, not cruel, just quiet and final, the sound of a door closing. "I didn't ruin anything, Lena," I said, walking over to the table. "You did that all by yourself." I reached into the drawer, pulled out the folder, and set it down. She set the papers down in front of her. Her gaze fell, scanning the cover. Her breath caught. "Divorce papers. Signed, dated, ready." Her voice cracked. "You've had these." I nodded slowly. "Since the moment you thought I'd be the fool in the room." She stared at me as if the walls had begun to close in. "No, we can fix this." I didn't mean. I cut her off with nothing more than a glance. "You wanted control, Lena," I said calmly. "You just never expected what would happen once I stopped needing to hold on." I turned and walked down the hall, the sound of my footsteps steady against the hardwood. Behind me, silence, not the angry kind, but the defeated kind. Outside, the world had gone still. Inside, so had I. And that was the real ending. Not with shouting, not with slamming doors. Just me, walking away. Already gone. If this story stirred something within you, leave a comment below. Have you ever played it cool when they expected you to break? I want to hear your story. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. The next one might cut even deeper.